The morning sun crept over the rolling hills of Wyoming, spreading golden light across the frost-tipped grass. It was the kind of morning that whispered of hope, even to those who had long stopped listening for it. Inside a small wooden farmhouse at the edge of town, a widow named Clara Bennett stood by the window, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. Her late husband, Henry, had passed nearly 2 years ago, leaving her with a struggling ranch and a heart that had forgotten how to hope. She had placed an ad in the Cheyenne Gazette a few weeks back: help wanted, experienced ranch hand. Fair pay, room and board included. She didn't expect much. Folks said her ranch was cursed with bad luck. Cattle had gone missing, fences broke faster than she could fix them, and a drought had made the fields dry as bone. Still, she prayed for a miracle. That miracle came knocking one cold afternoon. There was a firm knock at the door, 3 deliberate taps that echoed through the quiet house. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and opened it. Standing there was a tall man, rugged, sunburned, with eyes the color of storm clouds. He tipped his hat politely. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and measured. "I was told you need a rancher." Clara blinked, surprised. "Yes, I did post an ad. You're here about that?" He nodded. "Name's Luke Mercer. Been workin' cattle near Fort Laramie most my life, but the land there's gone dry. Figured I'd come where there's still some fight left." Clara studied him for a moment, his calloused hands, his weathered face, and the calm steadiness in his voice. Before she could reply, she noticed movement behind him. Peeking shyly from behind his long coat was a little girl, no more than 8 or 9, with sandy blonde hair and eyes as bright as morning dew. She clutched a worn-out doll and looked up at Clara with cautious curiosity. "This your daughter?" Clara asked softly. Luke nodded, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. "This here's Emma. Her ma passed a few winters back. We been gettin' by since, but it's been rough." A flicker of sympathy warmed Clara's heart. She stepped aside. "You both best come in. It's cold out there." Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth. Emma's eyes lit up at the sight of the flames, and she moved close, rubbing her little hands together. Luke removed his hat and stood by the doorway, his boots leaving faint prints on the wooden floor. Clara poured 2 cups of coffee and a small glass of milk for the child. "You'll find the work here ain't easy," she began. "I got 40 acres of land, 20 head of cattle, and a barn that needs mending. It's more than one person can handle." Luke gave a small nod. "Ma'am, I ain't afraid of hard work. That's all I've ever known." There was something in his tone, a quiet resilience, a man shaped by hardship but not broken by it. Clara saw it and, for the first time in a long while, felt a spark of reassurance. "All right," she said finally. "You can start tomorrow. I can offer a fair wage, and you can stay in the bunkhouse. It's old, but it'll keep the wind off." Luke glanced at Emma. "If it's all right, I'd rather we stay close. Don't want her too far away." Clara hesitated, then smiled faintly. "There's a spare room down the hall. It ain't fancy, but it's warm. You're welcome to it." That night, after supper, Clara watched as Emma dozed off by the fire, her small head resting on her father's knee. Luke sat quietly, staring into the flames. "You said you were told I needed a rancher," Clara said. "Who told you?" He smiled faintly, never looking away from the fire. "Old Sam Carter in town. He said there's a widow out here workin' herself to the bone, tryin' to hold on to what her husband built. I figured I might lend a hand." Clara's chest tightened. "Sam's a good man. Reckon he is," Luke said softly. "Said you had more grit than most men he knew." That brought a small, genuine smile to her lips. Over the next few weeks, Luke proved his worth. He fixed the fences, repaired the roof, and brought life back to the dying ranch. Emma followed him everywhere, feeding chickens, brushing the horses, even learning how to rope a calf. Clara couldn't help but notice how much laughter had returned to her home. At night, when the stars shimmered above the prairie, she'd hear Emma's giggles drifting through the house, followed by Luke's low chuckle. It stirred something deep in her, a warmth she hadn't felt since before Henry's passing. One evening, as the 3 of them sat down to supper, a storm rolled in from the west. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and the rain beat against the roof like drumbeats. Clara lit another lamp and glanced at Luke. "Storm like this can break fences," she said. "Hope the barn holds." Luke nodded. "I'll check it after we eat." Before he could rise, thunder cracked overhead, and Emma jumped, spilling her cup. Clara hurried to comfort her, and Luke's eyes softened at the sight. "She's been scared of thunder since she was little," he said quietly. Clara smiled gently. "Most children are. Even grown folks sometimes." When the storm finally passed, the world outside was washed clean, the air smelling of wet earth. Luke went out to check the barn, and Clara followed, carrying a lantern. Together they inspected the fences, their boots sinking in the mud. "You don't have to do this," Luke said, glancing over. "I've been doing it alone for too long," she replied. "Doesn't feel right standing by when someone else does the work." He smiled slightly. "You're tougher than most, Mrs. Bennett." "Clara," she corrected softly. "Just Clara." "All right then," he said. "Clara." Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, a quiet understanding, fragile but real. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch began to thrive again. The grass grew thick, the cattle fattened, and laughter echoed through the once lonely house. Neighbors began to talk, whispering about how the widow and the drifter had turned misfortune into a fresh start. But it wasn't just the ranch that changed, it was Clara's heart. Every time she saw Luke lift Emma into the saddle, or fix the porch swing that Henry once built, she felt the ache of her loneliness fading. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch, staring at the setting sun. "Luke," she said softly, stepping beside him, "you've done more for this place than I ever could have asked. I don't know how to thank you." He looked up at her, his face lined with the marks of a life lived hard but honest. "You don't have to thank me, Clara. Truth is, this ranch saved me as much as I've helped it." She sat beside him, the silence between them comfortable, filled with the sound of crickets and distant coyotes. After a long pause, Luke spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "When Emma's ma passed, I swore I'd never get close to anyone again. Thought it'd be easier that way. But seeing her happy here, seeing you smile again, it's made me think maybe life's got more left to give." Clara felt tears sting her eyes. She reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "Maybe it does." Months later, when spring rolled around, the ranch was alive with color. Wildflowers carpeted the hills, and laughter filled the air. Luke and Clara worked side by side, their partnership deepening into something neither dared to name aloud. Then, one Sunday morning, Emma came running from the barn, her hair flying behind her. "Pa, Miss Clara, the foal's standin'." They hurried to the barn, where a newborn colt wobbled beside its mother. The sight made Clara laugh, bright and free, the way she used to before life had broken her heart. Luke looked at her then, truly looked, and saw not a widow or a ranch owner, but a woman with strength, kindness, and quiet grace. "I reckon this place ain't lonely no more," he said softly. Clara met his gaze, her smile tender. "No, Luke, not anymore." Outside, the sun rose high over the prairie, golden light spilling across the land. The once lonely ranch stood proud again, no longer just a patch of dirt and fences, but a home, a place where loss had turned into hope, and two broken souls had found something worth holding on to. And as the wind whispered through the fields, carrying laughter and life, Clara knew one thing for certain. Sometimes, the best things come not when you go looking for them, but when they come knocking, quiet, humble, and with a little girl standing just behind.